Okay, this is 26, chapter 26, objective 4. We're going to look at the specific electrolytes and how they're regulated in the extracellular fluid. So we're going to look at about 3 of them. Let's go ahead. Okay. Get a little pen. So electrolytes, if you remember, are going to be charged particles. They're going to have ions that are going to be in solution that are going to help with the movement of the electrical charge. Electrolytes come from foods that we eat, so that's where you get them from. They're removed from our bodies by liver, skin, lungs, and I put kidneys in bold because that is the one that we're mainly talking about in this chapter. The concentration of electrolytes in the extracellular fluid, keep in mind this is the plasma and the fluid between the cells. It is regulated so it doesn't change unless the individual is growing or gaining weight or losing weight. So these have to maintain homeostasis, especially within the blood. There's a certain quantity that needs to be there. And if it's not present in the right amount, it's going to cause problems. Several organ systems are involved in this. You can probably see up here, you've got liver, skin, lungs, kidneys. Definitely something that's important because multiple organ systems are involved in this. Let's take a look at sodium regulation first. Now, sodium is the dominant extracellular cation. So let's just kind of break that word down a little bit. Extracellular means it is found outside of the cell. Cation means it's a positively charged particle. So this in here is the inside of the cell. This right here is your capillary. This is the interstitial fluid. So you can see right here, you've got a high sodium ion concentration outside of the cell. 90 to 95% of the extracellular fluid pressure, that osmotic pressure that we keep talking about, is actually due to sodium ions because it's the main dominant extracellular cation. Believe it or not, I know this is going to be hard to believe, people in the United States consume 20 to 30 times the amount of sodium they need. So a person needs half a gram of sodium, 0.5 grams of sodium daily. They normally get 10 to 15 grams daily. So that is quite a large jump in how much they need. So you can see why people, one of the main problems with high blood pressure would be because of a high salt diet. Keep in mind, where salt goes, water goes. So if you've got a lot of salt inside that blood vessel, water is going to go inside that blood vessel too, and that's going to cause high blood pressure, which again is going to be detrimental to the person. So you can see kind of why that is as a problem. Kidneys are the major route to get rid of that sodium. If you remember, we were talking about that in the ascending limb of the loop of Henle. Sodium ions pass through the glomerulus and enter into the filtrate. So they're small enough to actually pass and get into the filtrate, and then concentration of the filtrate and plasma at Bowman's capsule should be about the same. Just a for example here. And again, this is old information. It may have changed. I don't know that it has. But for example, if you only need half a gram daily, look at how much you're getting from, what is this, a Big Mac? Kind of looks like a Big Mac. This right here, you're getting 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams is 1 gram. So you're getting 1 gram right here from just eating the sandwich. And again, you're already double what you need just from the sandwich. Take a look over here. You've got 45 milligrams from the soda. And then from the French fries, you've got 430 grams. So when we take all of these grams and add them up, you get 1.48 grams of sodium. Keep in mind, that's one meal. That's just one meal. Keep in mind, you only need 0.5 grams. So you are triple what you should be just from this one meal. Just to kind of give you an example here, sodium, you've got 800 milligrams. If you were going to stay in line with exactly what you needed for the day, that should be 500 milligrams. Okay, so you're already 300 over just from eating an egg white McMuffin. That's it. From drinking some chocolate milk, you're about halfway to where you need to be, 220 milligrams. And from some Gatorade over here, you're at 270 milligrams. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that it's only 270 milligrams, if you want to be honest. I would have thought it would have been a whole lot more sodium than that. It's even less than the McMuffin, which again kind of surprises me. But just to give you an idea of where this information can be found on food labels and how important it is to know how much sodium you're getting and to stay within the guidelines for a daily recommended allowance. So the proximal convoluted tubule for sodium is constant. So that means there's not going to change. There's not a lot of change going on between the concentration of sodium within the proximal convoluted tubule. The distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct, that's under hormonal control. Remember, antidiuretic hormone. So aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption from the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. Aldosterone is another hormone that's involved, and if you remember, aldosterone has to do with the sodium and the potassium. So if you have a low extracellular fluid concentration, that means you're going to have a low BP, low blood pressure. That's going to result in increased aldosterone. So remember, low blood pressure causes aldosterone to be secreted, which will cause water resorption. Therefore, sodium is also going to be resorbed. So if you're adding sodium back into the blood vessel, if you're adding water into the blood vessel, sodium's going to follow. And again, the purpose of aldosterone is to increase blood pressure. So that would make sense that happens. So high aldosterone results in about 1/10 of a gram of sodium in the urine. Low or absent aldosterone results in about 30 to 40 grams of sodium lost in the urine. The primary mechanisms that regulate sodium concentrations in the extracellular fluid, they're not monitoring sodium directly, but rather the extracellular fluid osmolality or blood pressure. So if the quantity of sodium increases, then the osmolality of the extracellular fluid increases. So they're just determining, oh, hey, there's a lot of solute in the blood, rather than, oh, there's a lot of sodium in the blood. Keep in mind, this is the predominant extracellular cation. So if you're monitoring just generally all the stuff that's in the extracellular fluid, sodium is going to be the primary one that's there. So again, you're not really just measuring specifically sodium directly. You're also measuring blood pressure. Increased extracellular fluid osmolality is probably due to high sodium levels. That's going to stimulate antidiuretic hormone secretion. This increases water resorption in the kidneys and thirst. Consequently, water consumption, extracellular fluid volume, and water conservation increase, which means you're going to increase blood pressure. You need to know these two definitions, hyponatremia and hypernatremia. Hypo means low, where hyper means high. Natria, that right there has to do with sodium. That is the Latin name for sodium on the periodic table. That's why the symbol for sodium is capital N lowercase a, not S, because for sodium, it's for its Latin name. And then emia is referring to anything in the blood. So hyponatremia means low sodium in the blood, reduced plasma sodium. You're not getting enough sodium. It's the blood is diluted, so it's a lot of excess water. Hyperglycemia, lethargy, confusion, apprehension, seizures, coma, all of this can result in low sodium ion concentrations in the blood. Typically, that's not a big problem. It's more of this hypernatremia that you're going to have more issues with. It's a high dietary sodium intake is the cause. Overexcretion of aldosterone could also be a reason, so that's a pituitary gland potential problem there. Water loss, convulsions, pulmonary edema, thirst, fever, dry mouth, restlessness, all of these are results of elevated serum or plasma sodium ions. Now, you've got this handout. This talks about sodium intake and blood pressure. So if sodium intake is low, that means blood volume is going to be low, which will then cause blood pressure to be low. Now, we all know what happens when you've got low blood pressure and what's going to be going on here. That's going to ignite that renin pathway. So renin is going to be produced from those juxtaglomerular cells of the afferent arteriole of the kidneys, which is going to result in angiotensin 1 being created, which is then going to result in angiotensin 2 being created. And again, I didn't go into those intermediate enzymes there. Now, those angiotensin receptors for angiotensin 2 are going to be brain, kidneys, adrenals, pituitary gland, arterioles. That's going to cause an increase of thirst to try to get that blood volume up. Sodium chloride, salt, and water reabsorption. Sodium and water reabsorption from the kidneys. Pituitary gland is going to cause an increase of vasopressin, antidiuretic hormone being secreted, which again is going to cause an increase of sodium and water reabsorption back into the bloodstream. The arteries are going to undergo vasoconstriction, and these four right here are going to result in increased extracellular fluid volume, which will increase blood volume, which will increase blood pressure. And then the vasoconstriction will increase total peripheral resistance, which will increase blood pressure. So you've got a lot of different pathways here, all acting due to the presence of that angiotensin 2. And independently, they're all causing the same thing to happen, increase in blood pressure. Now let's take a look at potassium. So you've got blood potassium levels rise. That's going to cause aldosterone to be released from the adrenal cortex. And keep in mind, sodium and potassium do the opposite thing. So if you have a high blood potassium, that means you're going to have a low blood sodium. The aldosterone is going to target the kidneys, and the potassium levels will fall, and the sodium is going to be reabsorbed. That's going to cause sodium and potassium levels to go back to normal. So you've got this handout in your packet of things that you got from the bookstore. So just showing you that we've got low blood volume and blood pressure, and then you're going to have an increase in potassium in the blood. Other factors are going to be stress and high blood pressure, high blood volume. Ultimately, all of this is going to result in high blood volume and or blood pressure. Okay, you know yourself that when you're stressed out, your blood pressure is going to go up. It's kind of like putting you into sympathetic mode with fight or flight mode, right? So again, follow that handout. Same thing we've been talking about, so nothing really new there. Regulation of calcium. Regulation of calcium ions. You should have seen this handout multiple times. We're talking about if blood calcium levels rise, you need to know that the thyroid gland is going to detect that, secrete calcitonin, which is going to stimulate calcium deposits in the bone. You should also know that if blood calcium levels fall, that's going to stimulate the parathyroid glands, which sit behind the thyroid gland, embedded in the back of the thyroid gland. The parathyroid glands are going to secrete parathyroid hormone, which are going to trigger the osteoclasts to break down bone matrix and put calcium back in the blood. All of this should be familiar. We've mentioned this a couple of times so far. And then that's going to conclude Objective 5.